Hi everyone, I hope you all are doing well and all of you are safe and healthy during this time. This is Radhika here again, and this video is going to be about how an unbalanced empath can look a lot like someone who has borderline personality disorder. So let us see first what are the symptoms, the main symptoms of borderline personality disorder, and when you could be diagnosed with that disorder. So the first point is um, a lack of sense of self, meaning you do not actually know who you are, what you represent, what are your ideas, what are your ideals, etc. So this can show up in a lot of ways. So one way it can show up is that someone can be a people pleaser, so they do everything that is told to them. They don't say no to anything. They lack boundaries. They lack boundaries of time, of purpose, of behaviors, etc. Another way this can show up is someone who picks up habits very quickly when they meet other people, who take on personalities, the imposter syndrome. So they can behave like other people very quickly and start using their language, start using their gestures, the way they operate, etc. So they take on personalities of other people. Um, then another thing could be like you feel numb a lot of the time. You don't know who you are. You can't feel your body. You feel empty and alone inside. So you crave people. You crave someone else, instead of just being whole within yourself. You are always craving other people around you. So these can all be symptoms. So the basic thing is a lack of sense of self. So the narcissism part is missing. The narcissistic part of a person is missing. The ego is missing. Or you can say the ego is malformed or not fully formed yet. It's not a very fully formed, firm ego. It's an ego that wavers, that changes according to situations. So that might be one symptom. Then another symptom may be a difficulty regulating emotions. So it could be that when emotions come up, first of all, they are very intense, very, very, very intense, and they are hard to handle. So if excitement comes, it's a lot of excitement. So it goes from 0 to 100 very quickly. It's like a car that has a very good pickup. So suddenly everything becomes super strong. So if this person loves someone, it's the greatest love ever. Or if the person hates someone, it's the greatest hate story ever. So it everything becomes very extreme with borderline personality disorder, especially the emotions. So anxiety feels extremely anxious. When you're sad, it's almost like a depression. So all of the emotions are extremely exaggerated, and this is mostly because there has not been emotional regulation, or whoever is experiencing it, that person does not know how to regulate emotionally. um, so that can be one, that can be another symptom. Then another symptom which is very prevalent is a fear of rejection. Now this rejection can be a real rejection where you get rejected, or it could be a very subtle rejection, like you say a joke and one person doesn't laugh, but five people laugh. So suddenly you're like, this person hates me. So it's like these extreme associations with subtle behaviors that people have. And this can be called as sensitivity because this person is extremely sensitive to tone of voice, to gestures, to behaviors, to the energy that people are projecting, or the energy that they themselves have. So, all of these are symptoms. Another symptom is also many times people who have borderline personality disorder will show self sabotaging behaviors. So they assume the worst case, or they catastrophize, or they will think so much about something, and then they will act as if what they are thinking is the reality, even though reality and what they are thinking might be a little bit different. They kind of hyperimpose their thinking on the reality, and so they start seeing things which are actually not there. And this can get very confusing with gaslighting, because it's very similar to gaslighting. And so it just depends on whether a person is actually believing the worst where it's not happened, compared to a scenario with narcissists where the worst is happening but they are minimizing it. So this point especially gets very confusing, because it can go either way. uh, so self sabotage is a difficult one, right? Because you don't know whether you're sabotaging yourself or whether the other person is actually intending harm towards you. And many times you feel that they are intending harm, but maybe in retrospect you might have seen that actually things just were going in a bad way and they didn't really mean harm to me. It can happen. So, yeah, that's very confusing. Then another thing is hypervigilance. So, it kind of ties with the previous point where in self sabotage, you might think yourself to self sabotage or think a situation to self sabotage. But it's also this hypervigilance of people's tone of voice, because it is also related to rejection or isolation from a group kind of a thing. The hypervigilance aspect is really high. This person is extremely sensitive to rejection of any sort and exclusion of any sort. Even if, like, five people laugh on a joke, a person who has borderline personality disorder might feel outed from that joke and might take it as a sense of rejection on themselves. And this is because their sense of self is not very well formed yet. So obviously this comes from attachment theory. For all of you who know about attachment theory, so a person who has borderline personality disorder is not a person who has received secure attachment style in their childhood. The attachment was very either not present, which might result into a person becoming a dismissive avoidant, or the attachment was very sporadic and inconsistent, which might result a person being in a fearful avoidant, or the attachment from the caregivers was so much, they were so into the child that they kind of put their own personality inside the child. And whenever the child kind of, like, the child moved a little bit away from the personality that the parent has put in, the child was extremely like scolded a lot, or the reactions were extreme if they disobeyed what the parent wanted the child to be. So such a child develops anxious avoidant personality, attachment style, sorry. So these people are very codependent, on whoever, their parents, their partners, and they lack a core personality. They take on the personality of the family. Whatever the family has put into them, they take that on. So these are basically the symptoms of of uh, people who might have borderline personality disorder. And if you go through them, you will realize they match a lot with anyone who is experiencing complex post traumatic stress disorder, after having, if they had like a childhood with a borderline parent or a narcissistic parent, or they lived a life experience in which they had a narcissistic experience, and after that experience they are their personality will change according to the points that I just described. And previously in my channel, I was not using the term borderline personality disorder, but we would call it as an unbalanced empath. So it's a person who feels a lot, who's very sensitive, who does not want to harm people, but also they might lack some of the boundaries that they should set up, emotional regulation that they should have, good self love that they should have towards themselves, etc. So if you understand, there's a lot of overlap between someone being an unbalanced empath and someone displaying signs of borderline personality disorder. um, so yeah, this was this video, and most of the time borderline personality disorder is due to extreme emotional neglect in childhood. It could also be because one of the parent is borderline, or one of the parent is narcissistic, or a combination of these. It could also result due to sexual harassment that has happened during the child's childhood, or extreme emotional neglect that has happened. And yeah, the emotional deregulation part can also happen due to a lot of trauma from childhood that is unresolved. So could be a child in a war zone gets displaced, or a child loses the house in a fire and they can never get back up again to the same financial level that they were. And it could be a divorce that happened during the child's childhood and nothing was ever explained to the child. So every all the emotional dysregulation that happens, the impulsivity that you see in a grown up person who has borderline personality disorder, could be because of these unresolved traumas that they faced in their childhood. If by any chance you see that you have these symptoms, and you have seen that you might have had these symptoms your whole life, or in your adult life, maybe like after teenage years, um, there's a lot of us out here who have similar symptoms, and there's a lot of help available for this. So you are not alone, and many people are experiencing this in the world right now, and there's a lot of help available online, through apps, through therapy, through talking to people in your area, groups who meet up on maybe a weekly basis or monthly basis to discuss such stuff. And all of this will help you feel less lonely, and it will help you understand that you are not alone. A lot of people are going through the same things or similar things that you have gone through and are going through, and there is hope. It gets better with time, it gets better with more mindfulness, more better practices, much a better healthier lifestyle. All these symptoms will slowly reduce. And basically what we used to say previously on this channel, you will move from an unbalanced empath mode to a balanced empath mode, where you have more boundaries in place, you have more of a sense of self, of who you are, of what you stand for, and you will have better self regulation routines. You will be much more in check with your emotions. You will have a much increased sense of safety, security, support in your life. So yeah, help is available and we are not alone. There's a lot of us here who are going through the same things. So I thank you all for watching this video, and as always I wish you all a lot of love and a lot of light. Thank you. Bye.